Hi, Terry. I'm Christy McNabb, and good to meet you. I absolutely love your daughter, and coming to enjoy, I think it's your niece, Rebecca. I think Julie said that was her cousin. Um, anyway, apparently, I'm just meant to be friends with your entire family, which is totally fine with me. You seem like cool cats. Um, I want to apologize for the delay on this. I like to check in with myself and Spirit as well to see like timing on these things. Um, and partially because it does take a little bit out of me, so I want to make sure I'm able to be fully present. But also, I just think that there's timing. There's a time for these things. So I have been asking the cards here, and we're using it's called Tarot of the Old Path is the deck that you chose. Um, it was created, I think it says eight pagan witches, which I love. I feel like I've resonated with this deck. I got a reading from it a couple years ago, and then I actually just had to buy it because it resonated so much with me. Um, and I thought that was interesting because the imagery is not really my favorite, but it always speaks to me. So, anyway, I have been asking the deck as I'm shuffling what messages should come through for you. And a little disclaimer I like to tell people, and I apologize for my appearance. I just got out of bed and did this thing. So, I like to give the disclaimer, as with anything spiritual or intangible, to take what resonates with you and leave behind what doesn't. And so, um, these are divination tools. They are not perfect, and I am not perfect. I'm a human messenger. And sometimes I attract messages that are for me, um, even though I'm asking it for you. And sometimes they're for both of us. So that's kind of the beauty. Um, I think that's just a little side note. I think that's why people are attracted to certain readers, is because the message can be both for both of them. So, um, just my own little tangent. So, when I talk about resonance, it's kind of like strumming a guitar. So when you pick that guitar string, it vibrates, and that's what creates the sound that we hear. That's resonance. When it doesn't resonate, it means it's flat. It doesn't move. You don't hear anything. When we're talking about stuff like this, usually it's something you feel in your body. You may feel an overwhelming amount of emotion. You may be upset. You may be triggered. You may feel uncomfortable. Anything that kind of stirs you from a normal state of being to a different state of being is generally it's resonating with you. That's what I mean by that. If it falls flat, leave it be. Don't worry about picking up something that's not for you. And generally, if it falls flat, you tend to forget about it anyway. So as you're rewatching this and different things strike you, um, don't get too wrapped up in the thing that, like, well, she said that thing and I didn't really feel that. I didn't really notice any change or any response. Don't overanalyze it. Just um, it's kind of what I tell in my yoga classes, like notice what's happening and just observe. Practice being the observer. So with that in mind, it usually helps to have a journal or a piece of paper or something handy as you're watching through this for the first time, and then any subsequent times. I'm basically I'm getting um, a snapshot of this time and space for you. So um, that may change. The messaging may affect you differently down the road. So you may get different things today than you're going to get a month or 2 months later. Although just keep in mind that, again, I'm only providing a snapshot of what I notice and feel at this juncture. And as I've come to learn, there are always many factors at play, including other people, and everyone has choices. And so um, just keep that in mind. I don't know why. I felt like I don't normally do that long of an introduction, but I just kind of felt like I needed to say all those things. So, okay. So we're going to just get going. Okay. So I'll show you the spread here in case you're interested. Um, it's a little hard to do, so bear with me. Okay. There we go. All right, so we're doing a Celtic cross spread here. Sorry, you are also getting a few of all the other things on my table, including my breakfast. Okay, but so that's the spread. I'm going to go through each card and then how they play into one another here. So your center card here, Knight of Cauldrons. This is where you are in this moment. Okay. So there's something guarded about you. Cauldrons is emotion, symbolizes emotion, and so there's kind of this idea that you're kind of holding your emotion at arm's length. Okay, so you've got this guy's got all his armor on, and he has his cauldron, his emotion in his hands, so it's still accessible, but it's everything is very protected. So very careful of what goes in, what comes in, what goes out, and I'd say you have some pretty good reason to do. This is the recent past. So upright, it's the Nine of Swords. I'm going to leave it upright actually, because this makes more sense. So it seems like you have reason to be guarded. There have been swords tend to be words and communication, so just lots of negative things coming your way, and there's even this sense that like it maybe even took you by surprise. So like his hands are bound across his eyes. It's almost like um, you didn't see it coming, and even as it was coming, it was just so unexpected that um, instead of being able to deal with it and being able to um, rely on your boundaries, it was like you were just taken advantage of and multiple times. And so instead of creating some healthy boundaries with people and places, you just crafted yourself a whole damn night suit, like, and sometimes that's really important and really necessary. So don't take that as a criticism. Um, Things and offenses do come at us unexpectedly sometimes and repeatedly. And sometimes when they're from trusted sources, we don't always know how to handle that because we've trusted this person or place or thing so much and so openly that when we receive receive an insult or an injury from them, it's kind of a natural instinct, like we just build that shell. And it's the same. I get kind of the image of like armadillos or other animals that have these like really tough exteriors, these shells, and there's a reason for it. Like it protects them, it keeps them alive. It's an evolutionary advantage. The unfortunate thing with humans is that we our shells can keep us isolated. And so that may also be part of what's happening here is you're protecting yourself from the injury, but you're also isolating yourself. And so there's so the recent or the near future is the Ace of Pentacles. So this is what you're moving toward. The card overlaying these three is the Ten of Cauldrons, and this is generally serves as a bridge or a block. I think this is a bridge. I think this is actually something that an energy you need to move into. Um, as you can see, this family is very open and forthright with their emotions. They are able to be happy and joyful, um, and so it's kind of the sense of, so we got the masculine, feminine, and the inner child going on in this card. Okay, so, and by masculine and feminine, I mean divine masculine, divine feminine. I talk a lot about these things in my readings, and I think it's because we're moving into an age where universe, spirit, God wants us balanced, wants us to recognize the difference between the divine masculine and feminine and the shadowy, corrupted versions that we tend to live within, which are more gender based and more social, um, like gender role based, social expectations, things like that. For instance, a woman does this, a man does this. Um, that's not that's not what I mean by masculine and feminine. The masculine and feminine actually exist in all of us, in all beings, and this is the fascinating thing is this is a concept that goes back, like to the beginning of time. Funny because I think this came up with Julie's reading. You guys are gonna have to compare notes, but in Hindu tradition there is Shakti and Shanti. Shanti and Shakti. I have to look it up. This is kind of embarrassing because I'm pretty sure I just did this for Julie's too. You guys must be connected as well. Let me look this up real quick. And you may even know, so I apologize if I'm kind of wasting your time here. But Shakti. Mm-hmm. So I'll try to talk and look at the same time. Shiva and Shakti. They are the masculine and feminine energies of God. Um, and so where Shiva is the masculine, the destroyer, the protector, the warrior energy, cold, not as open to relationships. Shakti is the complete opposite, very warm, very nurturing, very relational. We tend to think of those as negatives, but they actually work together and balance one another. And so within ourselves, it's important to also balance the masculine and feminine energies, even though most people tend to lean strongly toward one or the other. Again, irregardless of your gender. So, and then the inner child is here as well. So there's kind of this sense of reconnecting with balancing your masculine, because what I'm getting from the Knight is that there's kind of an overemphasis of masculine, right? So maybe when in the Nine of Swords time you were just really open, you had that overemphasis of feminine energy, being too open, being too trusting, um, and just kind of letting everyone in. And so in the pendulum swinging, you went to the opposite side of the masculine being the emphasis. And again, these are kind of the negative, shadowy aspects of the masculine. So where it's like super guarded, super closed, self-protection versus like just understanding and protecting what's good. So learning to balance those two, the masculine and feminine energy. I have a couple resources for you to take a look at. One is Women Who Run with the Wolves. She talks a lot about the masculine and the feminine energies, and it's just kind of overall an amazing book. She's Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Estes, is the author. She's phenomenal. Another one is alternate nostril breathing, and this is a breathing technique that will help balance the masculine and feminine. And doing something like that daily I think will be a good tool for you. So all that to say, and then reconnecting with the inner child, whether that's a wounded inner child or just a suppressed inner child. We all have an inner child that needs our attention, sometimes needs our reparenting, always needs our love and an outlet to express itself. So, connecting with that inner child and just really asking what it would do. Um, this is a whole other tangent, but unfortunately, we spend a lot of time as adults telling kids what to do when really they have the sensitivity and a lot of time the wherewithal. They need boundaries and structure, but they are very sensitive to being led by spirit, and that inner child within you is no exception. So tap into that. And then that's going to bring you to this place of, Ace of Pentacles. It's a little bit, um, it's a weird card, to be honest. And I'm just getting new beginnings from it. So keeping that in mind. So speaking of feminine, divine feminine energy, the Empress, one of my favorite cards, besides the High Priestess. I mean, look at her. She's like the mother archetype, the feminine, divine, incarnate. She's nursing a babe. She's got one growing inside of her. The animals are all attracted to her. Yeah, she's gorgeous. And the thing to keep in mind with the I see this as an invitation to grow into this, to move from the no boundaries, doors wide open idea of femininity into this more regal. I mean, she is still vulnerable, okay? She's still vulnerable. That's not, you can't escape that, unfortunately. But there's also this I don't know if higher is the word, but it is a higher understanding of what it means to be feminine. And it doesn't mean necessarily that you give all of your goodness away. It means that you understand what's valuable, and then the masculine comes in and helps you protect that. So yeah, the Empress card is so hard. I like just get impressions of things, so sometimes it's really hard to articulate. I'm sorry. The Empress is a major arcana card. If you're not familiar with that, it's just it's a stronger impression of things. So whereas the rest of these, the numbers and the suits, they can be fleeting, they can be moldable. The Empress, I mean, the major arcana comes in and it's like it's heavy hitting. It's got a punch to it, and so I get the sense that like the Empress energy is there to remind you what you're evolving toward. This is something that you're moving toward, and you just won't know until you get there. But keep setting your sights on that. Even if you just like want to take a picture of the Empress card and keep it on your phone, or keep that idea in front of you somewhere. The divine feminine incarnate is like what you're aiming for. And it's gonna, the pendulum swings over here to the masculine, and it will eventually balance back. So you'll see some remnants of your old self in this picture because they're not all negative. They're not. You've had a lesser understanding of what feminine meant. One that was more influenced by patriarchy, by the society, by outside expectations. And this femininity is something that connects you with the divine. So it's just another level. It's just a whole other level. And again, you won't know until you get there, but when you do, when you can sit down and go, oh yeah, okay, I have a grasp of that. It'll make more sense. I'm sorry, it doesn't now. So Nine of Pentacles is also down here. And I get this sense that maybe this is what you think it is. Like, Pentacles tend to be more deeds, actions, work you do with your hands. And I mean, it's like this heavy necklace around her neck, right? It's like she can't even wear it without having to prop it up down here on her lap. So it's kind of, I guess I'm getting the sense that you're moving through this where it's like this action based, very put together, very, okay, so look at the difference between these two chicks. And I don't mean to use chick offensively. I'm sorry if that is offensive, but look how put together she is. She's very image based because everything is very perfectly aligned for her. Everything looks right. It's very, she's on it, right? I mean, her dress, her clothes are pressed. They are in a very specific shape. Her headdress is this ornate, ridiculous thing. You can tell, I mean, her head is probably just going to fall right over. But it's everything she's wearing, okay? Wearing to look the image of the feminine, to play the role. And then you have the Empress, and look how opposite she is. Everything flows from her. Her hair is flowing. She has her crown on, but I think that's really only to designate who she is, that she is regal, that she is royalty. But I mean, her dress, her, nipple is exposed so that she can feed her baby. She's not concerned with image. This woman is not concerned with image. And yet, the feminine, she just oozes femininity. So there's this idea, like you're moving through this, what it looks like to be feminine, into what it actually is to be feminine. And those are two different things. It's the idea of doing versus being. Okay, so as much as you can, allow the doing to fall away. I mean, let go of something that you committed to do for someone that doesn't feel right, and then just see what happens. Like, see how you feel when you let go of it. See how they respond when you let go of it. Like, play with this a little bit. So these cards aren't feeling right, so I'm going to actually redraw and see what happens. Okay. So you're a student, okay, and you're going to feel an aspect of you really ready to hunker down and get to the work of what this means, what it means to evolve, what it means to grow and transform. And so to me, what I get the visual of is reading books, taking notes, journaling. This isn't the kind of work where this is inner work. Okay, so this is not necessarily going to be something that people see right away. And it's not going to be a checklist or a to-do list. This is going to be, I think about when I read books, I tend to be like in bed and I have like one little light on and it's this kind of cozy womb like atmosphere. Like that's what you're entering into, is like this cozy, oh, it's not going to be so cozy because it is work, but it's almost like this tucked away, secluded place, doing your inner work, and it will bring healing. We have the Five of Pentacles in reverse, and you kind of see, I mean, this is what we're looking at. I mean, this is, if you want a snapshot of your interior, it's the masculine and feminine, and they're just beat up. They're beat up. Like, it's really time to identify. I mean, even just sit with your journal and write down masculine. Write down all the things you think when that word comes to mind. Write down feminine. Write down all the things that you think. And these can be your own phrases. These can be impressions of things. These can be things people have told you. I mean, my dad, he used to tell my sister and I, no man will ever want a woman who fill in the blank. Okay, whatever it was he didn't want us to do. So, nose ring, tattoo, um, you name it. Those are the two that stood out because those are the things I did. But he would say that. And so there's then this idea that a man, for me, I have to break down the idea of what the masculine means. Well, a masculine rejects the feminine if the feminine doesn't live up to the masculine standards. That's my idea of masculine. And so that's something that's going to be important to you. Dig deep to figure out where you've been, because this abuse, this is from you. Anytime you believed something someone told you, anytime you adopted their idea, anytime you decided that what they had to say was stronger and more important than your own voice, you did this to yourself, to your own masculine, to your own feminine. Now, it's in reverse. So to me, that's encouraging. That means that these things are healing. So as you do the work, as you begin the work and the study, you're going to begin healing the masculine and feminine inside of yourself. Okay. Interesting. The next two cards are major arcana cards. So they just brought a whole nother level here. This one is the Tower. Ironically, they're both kind of negative cards. The Tower and Temptation. So the Temptation card, that's sitting in space. I will say what I'm encouraged by with this is the softness of the masculine and feminine characters. They're no longer bloody and bandaged. They are not bound up in, they're not in tight clothes. They're in loose clothing. They look comfortable, right? And they look like they are enjoying each other to an extent, except that you've got the snake wrapping around his leg, and then you have this like eyeless, soulless fox. We're going to come back to that because I think I'm going to have to draw a few more cards to get more clarity. The Tower generally serves as a warning. Girl, you got masculine and feminine all over the place here. All right. Tower serves as a warning. Look at the two falling overboard here, Matt. The masculine and feminine. Of course, the theme of your reading here. And they're naked and vulnerable. I think, honestly, this card is saying don't be afraid to be naked and vulnerable. This is your fear, okay? That you're gonna allow these parts of you to develop and be exposed, and then it's all gonna burn down, and you're gonna lose everything, and you're gonna fall off the cliff into the water and drown. And maybe it will feel at times like you're drowning, and so this is not a warning that these things are going to happen. This is more of your fears in a picture. So as you're doing that journaling, this is her advice, allow the shadow side to speak. Allow your fears to have a voice. They don't need to drive the car, but allow them to have a voice. So Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a book called Big Magic. I'm not sure if you've read that. You might add that to your list. But she talks about fear and letting fear is never going to leave you. And that's kind of her idea, is like fear is never going to leave. But you do need to speak lovingly to it and tell it can't drive the car anymore. It needs to sit in the back seat. So it can be your companion. It can ride with you. But it doesn't get to tell you where to go anymore. And I think that's really what's happening here. I met with this gentleman this weekend. He does soul path clearings. Fascinating man, fascinating. And he said we talked kind of about the language of getting rid of whether it's attachments or presence in your life, spirits, um, whatever you want to call it, because he does house and property clearing as well. So he really helps, like, kind of send these spirits on their way. And he said, when you think, but I kind of look at it, I'm equating this also to our shadow side. So the parts of us that are maybe the parts we don't like to acknowledge. But he said, when you use the language, get rid of it. Can we just get rid of this? It's hostile. And it immediately puts those parts of you on the defense because they're a part of you. And it's like, he goes, imagine if you were listening to a group of people and they say, we're just going to get rid of her. And they point to you. Imagine how you would feel, right? So there's a word of caution here to let your shadow speak. Embrace it. Allow it to have a voice. That doesn't mean you have to do anything with what it says, but you can listen to it. And you can note it, you can acknowledge it. And a lot of times the acknowledging, it helps with that transformation process, right? So if you've got that wounded feminine who distrusts the masculine because her dad said, no man's ever going to want you if you get a nose ring, you have to let her be sad about that. You have to hear her out. You don't need to change it by saying, well, but not all men are like that. Or, oh, he didn't mean it that way. The ways we kind of get rid of our negative feelings. Allow her to be sad. Allow her to be sad and upset and comfort that part. And then say, also, that's not true. That's not true. You are loved just as you are. So you can still allow it to have a voice and speak reason to it, if that makes sense. The Temptation card. I do want to draw 3 more cards here. Oh man, power. Damn. Okay. Where once there were no major arcana, there are now a shit ton. I'm sorry for my language if that's offensive to you. It's just me. Okay, so here they are. Let me see if I can get them all on the camera. These are the 3 that just got drawn. So they were hiding out back there. Their order of appearance, it was the Wheel of Fortune, the Guide, and the Emperor. Okay, so I think I now know. So the temptation is you're going to be tempted to go it alone. And that's been your drawback. That's why you are the knight with the armor. Don't go it alone, okay? This middle guy, the guide, you have spiritual guides, you have human guides, you have God, Spirit, Universe guide. Make use of them. Explain yourself to them. Be vulnerable to them. Let yourself be dipped in the healing waters here. Look at the masculine holding the feminine. The feminine is just so tired. She's passed out. And she is. Your feminine is exhausted. Like she's exhausted. And the masculine stepping up in this. And you have the spirit guides up here. You have the masculine and feminine to appeal to. Right? So if it's the masculine you're having trouble with, like, I don't understand what this means. What is my masculine? Appeal to the masculine guides or spirit god person, like that part of that energy. If your feminine is exhausted, appeal to the feminine. Speak healing words to me, mother. Let me know I'm okay. And the Emperor here, the divine masculine. Look. They're partners. That's the encouraging word, is that that energy is blossoming in you. You are moving toward the Emperor, Empress energy. And then the Wheel of Fortune. It's all in your hands. Okay? It's all in your hands. You have choices. You can make different choices. You can move in different directions. You don't have to stay stuck. And some of this may even feel uncomfortable to you, like appealing to spirit guides and the divine masculine, the divine feminine, under maybe even believing that God spirit has a masculine and a feminine quality. Especially, and I'm just speaking kind of to my own background, but I grew up with Christianity, which is very patriarchal, is very masculine driven. Even though the Bible talks about, God being father and mother, the father part is capitalized on way, 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 way more. And unfortunately, that's been misinterpreted into meaning that men have a more important voice than women. So I understand wrapping your mind around some of this may be uncomfortable. The Wheel of Fortune is there to remind you that it's all a choice. It's all choice. Perspective is a choice. Understanding is a choice. And even what you choose to believe is a choice. It doesn't have to be what I'm saying. You may come to interpret a very different aspect of all of this, and that's okay. It's really the searching and the seeking that's going to be important. Yeah, I think if I could say anything was a theme for you, it's healing the divine masculine and healing the divine feminine within yourself, and allowing your shadow to speak. It's going to bring you to really good places. All right, that's all I got for you. We're at about that time. So, um, I usually tell people feel free to reach out with any questions, comments, concerns. I will say though, I let myself off the hook because I'm just the messenger here. If there have been some really significant, deep questions that have come up for you that aren't just clarifying questions, I would really recommend taking those to your divine sources, your guides, your God, your whatever, and asking for clarification. So, meditation and prayer are very important after these kinds of readings. The meditation portion is for you to sit with it, even if it makes you uncomfortable, sit with what has stirred you. And then the prayer part is asking for help and guidance. And those can go back and forth, maybe it's prayer first, then meditation, or maybe it's meditation, prayer, going, doing it multiple times. So anyway, thank you so much for trusting me with this reading. It was a delight to bring it to you. And I look forward to